Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile and save up to $600 a year. I've been scouting these big carriers for a minute now, and I've seen them pull the same play 1,000 times. They promise you the world, then hit you with a price hike right when the game gets tight. But Boost Mobile, their $25 a month unlimited wireless plan is the most consistent player on the floor. No contracts, no price hikes. Unlock the savings today at boostmobile.com/unlock. Based on average annual single line payment of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile customers compared to 12 months on the Boost Mobile unlimited wireless plan as of January 2026. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Have you ever been stuck on a weight loss plateau, trying everything and anything you can to lose that extra weight and reach peak health? We've all been there, but Noom's unlocked the secret to reaching the mountaintop. Go in micro. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $79 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Initial 3-week subscription and 4 weeks of medication from $79 plus tax and $179 per month plus tax for 12-week subscription thereafter. Final pricing depends on program selection. Noom GLP-1 RX program involves healthy diet, exercise, and support. Individual results may vary. Meds and personalization based on clinical need. Not reviewed by FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality. No affiliation with Novo Nordisk Inc., the only U.S. source of FDA-approved semaglutide. Not available in all 50 U.S. states.
Taking care of your eyes shouldn't be a hassle. That's why Warby Parker is a one-stop shop for all your vision needs. Our prescription glasses and sunglasses are expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Stop by a nearby store or use our app to virtually try on frames and get personalized recommendations. Did we mention we offer eye exams and take vision insurance too? For everything you need to see, head to your nearest Warby Parker store or visit warbyparker.com today. That's warbyparker.com.
Welcome to Aran Ireland This, a podcast series where we talk to Irish people from different walks of life as they reflect on their own journeys. Join me, Russell McDermott, as we explore the many aspects of Irishness and what it means to each of our guests through life's ups and downs. Ian McKinley, welcome to Aran Ireland This.
Hello. Hi, guys. You're well? Great to be here.
Good. And the first trick question we have is, have you been to Aran Island? How did you get there? And did you like it?
Yeah, so my memory as a young kid, I would have gone to Connemara an awful lot with my family and my folks. So as a youngster, I went to Inisheer, and it was when I was very, very young. So my memory of it wouldn't be to the forefront of my mind, but certainly what I do remember is, you know, getting on a bicycle and sort of following my parents around and that sort of thing. And I think we got kind of lucky with the weather. The boat ride a little bit bumpy and everything like that, but you sort of spend the day and then you head back. So between Inishbofin, I know that's not in the Aran Islands, but Achill Island. So you would have gone from, you know, Cleggan to Inishbofin and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't say that my knowledge is brilliant, but certainly have visited around Connemara as a youngster and as a teenager. So one of the most beautiful places that you can ever get
on a good day. I've been there 3 times. And the weather was good. I'd never want to be there when it's blowing hard and raining.
Yeah, and listen, we would have done, again, if it was raining, you know, we would have visited the caves or gone to Kylemore Abbey or something like that, or just ended up speaking to each other as a family. So yeah, if the weather was not great and your sort of options were limited, but when it was, certainly fond memories of driving around. And yeah, if you did get a beautiful day, you know, you really couldn't beat it.
Yeah, because family bonding can go many ways on a day like that. You know, if you're all stuck in together in the rain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is before, I suppose, sort of technology is where it is now. And, you know, I think we would have even brought little portable television from Dublin and
board games, those kind of things.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. But in some ways, you know, it made that sort of connection piece and meeting people, you know, even more to the forefront, you know, that whenever, you know, you saw someone, you were able to strike up a conversation, whereas obviously that's maybe a little bit, I'm not saying completely dead, but it's just the dynamic is different now.
Everybody's looking on their phone. Everything's changed.
Exactly.
Totally, yeah. I have 2 daughters and that's the way they spend their life, I believe, anyway. But you're from Dublin originally, aren't you?
Yeah, originally from Dublin, grew up in Rathfarnham in a little area called Whitechurch, and was really lucky to grow up there, sort of at the base of the Dublin Wicklow Mountains. Yeah. and sort of my folks moved to the family home in the 70s, and it was really, I suppose, as rural Dublin as you could get.
Yeah.
And my dad is from Tipperary, so would be sort of well used to that. So it was a nice little fit. But as time has gone on, obviously it's just been built up. I suppose the beauty of it was that 5-minute drive, you were heading up towards, Three Rock,
Pine Forest, all that, yeah.
Yeah, just beautiful, and you get the whole panorama of Dublin. And yes, this is, I suppose, before traffic has become absolutely bonkers around Dublin, but you could, without traffic, be in Dublin city centre in 15 minutes. Now that's not possible nowadays, but
no chance.
there was a great balance and a great sort of freedom growing up out there. So we're very lucky and fortunate to have grown up there.
Do you a border at Columbus, or did you do day school? Or
No. Would have been a day person. Okay. So I'm one of 4 kids and 3 older siblings, two brothers and a sister, and we all went there and all went in the same capacity as a day person, even though it's predominantly a boarding school. And I think just geographically there was never an excuse for being late to school. It was literally a 2-minute drive up the road,
Because now you can see it almost from the M50. In those days, you hadn't a clue where it actually was. It was so long.
Yeah, and funny, we still have family. My granddad would have had the old camcorder, and we still have videos of driving on the old Grange Road and up the old road, and then it transforming on the M50. And I remember as a kid, my brother and myself would have. Whenever the M50 was being built, I had no idea what was going on just because I was quite young. Yeah. We'd bring up the bikes and cycle up, along the M50 heading towards Tala or heading towards Dundrum and sort of get a lay of the land. So, but yeah, now it's sort of hard to miss because I think there's big signage on the M50. So
like when we used to go and play rugby there years ago, I always come from the depths of Kildare to Columbus. It was like a day trip, away to a foreign country. It was so far away.
Almost, yeah.
And how do you describe yourself in your passport? Ian, are you a broadcaster, pundit, former rugby player, coach?
Yeah. I'm sort of, I suppose, jack of all trades, master of none. I suppose if you're to put it in one sentence. So I think whenever I retired from rugby a second time, I sort of didn't want to be a one-trick pony, and I suppose I consider myself fortunate enough to be involved in a few different projects, which are really rewarding and exciting, and that sort of includes, as you said, the punditry, commentating, coaching kids at a school, and I currently work for Vision Sports Ireland as well. So and do a bit of public speaking as well for any sort of agencies or companies or universities, just on sort of visual impairment and my story, try and merge that all together. So yeah, different things going on, but all equally as rewarding.
And the progress of the Italian team makes your punditry quite valuable.
Hopefully not too biased. It's sort of, I suppose, for anyone that will listen to this, it's, I suppose my name, Ian McKinley, is not very Italian, but
Ian McKinley.
I remember years ago was on the Late Late Show with Ryan Tubridy, and I suppose in inverted commas, my Italian name came up, which was Jano Mancinelli, and that was what my friends in Udine, when I first moved over, that's what they sort of baptized me with, because Ian for a lot of Italians is quite difficult to say because the E and the I are pronounced sort of differently. So I either get Jan or Jano. That's so they're the two things. But yeah, I suppose from I suppose just a general rugby fan, anyone that follows rugby, like what a brilliant Six Nations is the best one. I think everyone can agree. It's just been good for the soul and good for the game, good for the players, I'd say, because just the jeopardy in pretty much every game, the quality that was on show, and a lot of bad publicity has been around rugby the last few years, just with concussion and too many rules and all that sort of stuff. And I would be, in agreement with the latter. I think it's very difficult to even follow for people who have played the game at times, let alone people who are new or the casual supporter. So the fact that all the talking was done on the pitch and no sort of arguments about referees, horrendous decisions or anything like that, the rugby did the talking. So yeah, it was, I'm sure everyone bar England will actually probably go go away from that tournament pretty happy.
Absolutely. And it's great to see Italy do well, because not so long ago the chatter was maybe they should be dropped from the Six Nations, whether you eligible to stay there, you know what I mean? So it's good to see that's come good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, and
I know you're biased.
Part of, yeah, no. Well, I mean, listen, I was part of that 30+ losing streak. Yeah. It's an awful place to be in. You feel for the Welsh players who were going on 3 years, not winning a game, and it just feels like a bottomless pit. So you can definitely at the time understand the calls for people to have a relegation battle. I think the powers that be are probably not as keen for that to happen. But in my near 10 years of being there, been over in Italy, you've seen enough to go, there are seriously talented players. It's just probably structurally Italy's quite far behind in relation even to Ireland. So yeah, things go in circles and circuits, but I suppose that the challenge now, I suppose the last time that Italy really rubber stamped themselves on the tournament was back in 2013. And it was pretty barren after that. So the challenge is to sort of keep that momentum going, because it's a very talented squad, great players, really good young players as well. So yeah, and I think it's just good for the tournament that people, even for the Ireland-Italy game in the Aviva, just weren't rocking up going, oh, well, this is a foregone conclusion.
Actually, it was, if the line-up pass had been straight, which you could argue wasn't that crooked, it could have been a different story.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, they're I suppose the fine margins, and I think
that to your point, that brings you where the competitive edges come into a game, where people would have said a couple of years ago, this is easy win for Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely, and you definitely, as a player, you feel that when you go to Twickenham, you go to Murrayfield, and people. It's an international, but are they taking it as seriously as one of the other games? And you definitely get a sense of that. So I think the respect level has been installed by this crop of players, and which is brilliant. And long may it continue. But the challenge is maintaining it. It can't just be a sort of flash in the pan. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what the future holds, and it's I'm just very happy because I'd still be friends with some of the players. So it can be a hard place when you're constantly losing. So finally, whenever a bit of when your hard work is noted in a positive way, it certainly makes turning up on a Monday morning for training a lot easier.
And were you always going to be a rugby player, Ian? Was that your thing?
Yeah. I suppose one of my earliest memories has been in the living room watching the Five Nations, and it was Ireland against England in '95. That was my first memory, so I would have been 5, and I was just like, I want to do that. And obviously it just would have turned professional at that stage, and you sort of don't really comprehend, I suppose, that as a career. You just want to play. So yeah, I started playing when I went to secondary school. I was nagging my parents for years beforehand to play, but I actually ended up playing Gaelic football beforehand with Kilmacud Crokes, and that was brilliant because it sort of prepared you for, I suppose, the demands of rugby in terms of being able to kick off both feet, being able to pass, being able to take a shoulder and I suppose the biggest thing is finding space. Rugby, obviously, there's a huge contact element to it, and the higher up you go, the less space there is. But it's certainly promoted that hugely. But yeah, I think in some ways it was in my blood. My dad played, my brothers would have played. My mum was a very good hockey player. But yeah, I didn't have much time really for the studying side of things or anything like that. It was all just fixated towards playing at the highest level and being the best, I suppose, that you could be.
It must have been too bad. You went to UCD, and that's where you got in the academy there, was it?
Yeah, so I finished the Leaving Cert in Columbus. So Columbus,
which in fairness, like Congo in its time, wouldn't have a huge history of producing international rugby players. So that jump from Columbus to the academy to UCD, etc., I found fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the school was about 300 in it. Yeah. At the time, there was about 160 boys. So to get 2 senior rugby teams over the 3 years was a success. Yeah. We would have had about, would have been pushing 28, 30 lads playing. And yeah, it was a big jump going from, like, I remember, I finished my Leaving Cert, and the next morning I was in training like to get a bit of muscle mass and a bit of speed into my game and everything like that. And then you were chucked on a pitch with the greats. And when I say the greats, I'm talking Brian O'Driscoll and Felipe Contaponi and Rocky Elsom. So it was a far cry from chucking a ball around with your mates, having a bit of a laugh in school, to all of a sudden, well, this is, Michael Cheika shouting at you. But it's, people say or ask you, how did you manage that? But you train for it, you prepare for it, and that's where I wanted to be. Obviously, I had loads to learn. You're not a finished article at all at the age of 18 coming out of school, but you're on the right path, definitely. And I remember I didn't even drive, and my mum would be driving me to the Leinster training sessions in the morning. We 7 o'clock gym session. So either she drove me, depending on how bad the weather was, or I cycled. And I just remember one time she picked me up, and it was after about a week, and I was just like, this is where I want to be. And it just made my mum really happy, because she would always just say, well, you just want your children to be happy. And I'd found something that I absolutely love doing.
It's amazing the way the human mind adapts to situations which on the face of it are incredulous or unbelievable a few weeks or days before, but you settle in and get on with it.
Yeah, and I suppose there's no room for complacency in no matter what discipline you're in, whether it's sporting or not. But I suppose when you're trying to cut your teeth, I suppose in the professional game, you can't wait around, and I suppose the biggest thing, you just have to be a sponge in terms of soaking up as much information as possible, and trying to announce yourself in the right way. And that's by, I suppose, putting your best performances. But it's definitely, it's a tough road to go. The training you put in is incredibly difficult. These are seriously conditioned athletes nowadays, and I think you certainly merit your time when you get there. But it was also incredibly exciting, because this is when and there would have been, I suppose, this divide in our house, with my dad being a proud Munster Tipperary man, and Munster were winning Heineken Cups and everything like that, and Leinster were just falling short, and this was sort of the turning of the tide now, when Michael Cheika was just coming towards the end of his tenure, but he was starting to change mindsets a little bit, and not just a little bit, a lot. And that sort of steeliness was coming in, and certainly to have seen that as a young kid, early doors, was amazing, to be honest. And you just knew that you were in the right place, that the whole club was going in the right direction, and sort of the conveyor belt of talent, along with those star-studded players, you were starting to see something build. And I suppose there's been a few disappointments in previous years, but the consistency level.
The work with, Czechs definitely saw the tide change. Matt Williams started some of the stuff, but Czechs saw the results, and you saw the awards coming the way. You could see something was going on. Yeah,
absolutely. And I suppose, I would have played my first time for Leinster, I was 19, and that was the week before the 2009 final. And to sort of, you probably just don't appreciate it when you're young. It just probably becomes normal. And it was certainly a thing. Whenever you put on a Leinster jersey, you expected to win. And that was something, I think, that was like Munster, from 2000 to 2009, probably. And that tide had turned in favour of Leinster. I suppose that whenever you put that jersey on, you just, losing was sort of not an option. And definitely, I'm sure the Celtic League win in 2000 with Matt Williams certainly propelled things along, and then Michael, obviously, with his sort of steely approach, certainly aided that approach.
And Rocky Elsom was some player then.
Yeah, and listen, I remember, again, you barely have enough facial hair to grow a beard, let alone even a mustache, and you're holding a rucking pad for Rocky Elsom and CJ van der Linde, who, on the World Cup winning squad for South Africa a couple of years prior. So you have to learn pretty quickly, because it's an unforgiving environment, and you're there to compete, but certainly you can look back with fond memories on those early times.
Now, it was with UCD where you suffered your own personal setback, wasn't it?
Yeah, and listen, we all have setbacks.
I've heard you talk a few times about it, and you're very philosophical, and there's no bitterness, you're kind of very accepting. But it couldn't have been easy is my overall question to you.
Yeah,
I mean, it took
and
a
it
lot of
wasn't.
energy. It couldn't have been.
No, absolutely not. And I'd be bluffing and lying if I brushed it off completely that much. But I suppose, like, obviously time definitely helps put things in perspective. Does the fact that I'm completely blind in my left eye and aesthetically it looks very, very different to my other eye, are those things that frustrate me? Of course. You're I suppose it was in a state of shock first and foremost, because you feel invincible when you're so well conditioned and trained. And I remember my dad would have said this even back in the 70s when he was playing, that you would feel like that you could run through a brick wall. And I remember him saying that to me as sort of a 15, 16-year-old. And I wasn't doing any of the sort of gym programs that you see now in some of the schools. But when you sort of break the ceiling, and you really do feel like that you could run through a door or a wall that's in front of you. So whenever you, I suppose, become so vulnerable in that state, and when you get an eye injury like that, there was, I suppose, a lot of uncertainty. So in some ways, when you pick up an injury, no matter what sport, but say we'll just use rugby, if you get a shoulder injury, you're able to work a little bit of your legs or vice versa. And this was a case of, well, we've never seen this before. We're just going to lay low and let, I suppose, time be the healer. And I couldn't do anything. So that was, I suppose, the deeply frustrating part, was now seeing guys maybe getting momentum either in the same position or around you, and you couldn't even be in that environment. It was sort of the unknown. So that was probably the frustrating piece to it. And I suppose I certainly like to be told, okay, you're out for 6 weeks, grand, we'll try and make it 1 month. Whereas this was, okay, take your time, go through the recovery process, which is doing nothing. We'll revert back in sort of a year and see how you are. Now, thankfully, the recovery accelerated, a lot quicker than that. So I think, to maybe answer the sort of philosophical piece, if I didn't get the second opportunity to play, which I'm sure we'll touch upon, I suppose I would be bitter about it, and I would speak differently about it. But thankfully, that's not the case, and I have my family to thank for that.
How many other cases are there of this type of injury? So
in non-medical terms, I burst my eyeball. So a teammate stood on it at the bottom of a ruck,
but the retina wasn't detached at that stage, was it?
No. So at the bottom of a ruck, a teammate and thankfully it was a teammate, because it didn't feel like it at the time.
Yeah.
I think when you've played rugby back even 20 years ago, the difference between a stamp and a rucking action. And this definitely felt like a stamp. And thankfully it wasn't one of the opposition, because if it was, you're getting into an area that's very murky and nobody really wants. So it essentially went out of its socket and was not in place. My eye was not in place, which can be a bit of a distressing sight, I suppose, for my family members. The medics, I'm sure, have seen these things before, but it was maybe not to that degree on a rugby field. And you see an awful lot of players, don't you, with cuts on their, on their cheekbone or just above their eyebrow. It's so common to get stitches across your eyebrow and stuff. But it was just a freak of a piece of metal, an eye, and an action in rugby all coming together at a bad time. So thankfully, the medical team were so quick.
Where was it? Belfield Park, was it? Belfield?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So there was a festival, so it's called Madefest, that Vision Sports Ireland run, and I was at it last year, and I was with someone who I've become very good friends with in the last few years, and we were in the car, and I just said, this is actually where I got my eye injury, and he was like, no, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, and I've never been back to the pitch.
Have you not?
So we just took a little walk along, and where I parked the car was actually just beside the rugby and football pitch.
Yeah.
And so walked in there and just sort of took a moment and didn't really, sort of just gave it a little thought and pointed out to the exact spot where it happened, because it's etched in my memory, and sort of walked away. So that was maybe a little bit surreal. So I've only ever been back to the scene of the crime, I suppose, once since.
And you're able to look at that with calmness as you describe it now?
Yeah, and I suppose I would like to think I had calmness at the time. I suppose the frustration and the anger came probably a couple of years after. So I got back and was, as I said, my recovery accelerated so much that I got back playing after 6 months, and there was no sort of return to protocol or a protocol return or anything like that, return to play. You know, you have that a lot with concussion and everything like that. It was very much just, right, you're on the pitch and there's a pad and there's a few forwards and a few backs and let's do some rucking. Grand.
But Joe, your vision was only 50% in the
yes.
back. So, you knew that, but there was no return to play protocols to confirm or check that for you.
So, I mean, once I got the all clear from my doctor, the surgeon, he just simply said, there's nothing I can say to you now that is stopping you from playing. You ultimately, like, you know, the risks of contact sport and everything like that. Your eye structurally is fine. We know that a cataract will develop. We just don't know when that's going to happen. And a cataract is not that serious. So, yeah, and I just started back training and needed to work on my depth perception and I suppose just confidence of going into that first ruck, and that's what I did. I remember one of the first sessions we did back with Joe Schmidt was the coach now, John O'Gibbs, who's infamous New Zealand player and coach, and he sort of looked after the forwards and the contact area defence, and it was literally just he had an exercise ready to go, a few pads, and I was right beside Nathan Hines, who Scotland international, and
big Nate,
you know. Yeah, it was what is he, 6'6", 6'7", and I was partnered with him, and it was just like, right, go in and sort of clean him out, ruck him out, and that was it. But that's sort of what I needed, and nobody ever made mention of anything or anything like that, even though you had lack of vision on one side. But as time went on, that gradually improved.
What age were you then, Ian?
20.
20, wow.
Yeah. So it happened in January 2010, and I was 20. So, yeah, as time went on, then Joe Schmidt was his first year, and again, just was playing and was trying to make up for lost time, and managed to pick up a few Leinster games along the way. And then that cataract that I mentioned earlier eventually arrived, and that happened to be the morning after the 2011 Heineken Cup final. So the really massive turnaround game, the Johnny Sexton inspired final in Cardiff.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those of us that, you know, you're registered in the squad and you still get your medal at the end of it, but weren't picked for the match day squad. So I fell into that category. And those guys, we had a game the next morning against the Irish under-20s. So we reluctantly, I'm sure, we played that game. And I just remember kicking for the posts, and my vision was just really blurry, and that was when a cataract was detected and required a few more operations, and just the vision was just not getting back to optimum levels, to what it was. It was never going to get back to 100, but I just wasn't happy. And then and
you were a left foot kicker, weren't you? Everything's over the left side.
Which is not ideal. So when you're struggling with sight and you're
but that's how you noticed the impairment, wasn't it? You didn't have the periphery.
Well, this game the following morning was in Wanderers, and for anyone that's been in Wanderers, I suppose it's a little bit open, and then you've got the clubhouse at the back, just at one of the ends behind the goalposts, and I just looked up and I was like, geez, that clubhouse doesn't look. Now I shouldn't have been looking at the clubhouse because I was focusing on kicking the ball over, but I was like, geez, that's not really struggling to see that. So I kicked the ball. Thankfully, it went over. We were 10-0 up. All happy days. And I was like, I just said to the medic, I was just like, I can't actually see properly here. And they were like, listen, come off. And that's when I went to hospital and then found out, it was a cataract, a couple of operations, didn't improve. And then sort of the turning point was when it was off season and a few weeks off from training before you go back into pre-season. And just my retina detached, which ultimately meant that my vision just went completely black.
The longer you stay alive, the longer you can enjoy Boost Mobile's unlimited plan with a price that never goes up. So here are some tips. Do not parallel park on a cliff if you want to enjoy an unlimited plan with a price that never goes up. Do not mistake a wasp nest for a piñata if you want to enjoy an unlimited plan with a price that never goes up. Do not microwave a hard-boiled egg if you want to enjoy an unlimited plan with the price that never goes up. Stay alive and enjoy unlimited wireless for $25 a month forever with Boost Mobile. After 30 gigs, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Mobile Unlimited plan.
Have you ever been stuck on a weight loss plateau? Trying everything and anything you can to lose that extra weight and reach peak health? We've all been there, but Noom's unlocked the secret to reaching the mountaintop. Go in micro. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $79 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Initial 3-week subscription and 4 weeks of medication from $79 plus tax and $179 per month plus tax for 12-week subscription thereafter. Final pricing depends on program selection. Noom GLP-1 RX program involves healthy diet, exercise, and support. Individual results may vary. Meds and personalization based on clinical need. Not reviewed by FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality. No affiliation with Novo Nordisk Inc., the only U.S. source of FDA-approved semaglutide. Not available in all 50 U.S. states.
As it did whenever the accident initially happened.
Because it just attaches from the optic nerve. Is that what happens?
Yeah, I was just in a car with my friends, and we were visiting another one of our friends who was playing for Connacht, and just couldn't distinguish the colours in the traffic lights that we were stopped at, and went, there's something seriously wrong. Went all the way back to Dublin. It actually ended up in a really bad weekend because out of the four of us there was a detached retina, there was glandular fever. And there was something like one of our friends actually had to go to hospital. Did he have what's that? He had a puncture or something. I can't remember the exact what happened, but 3 out of the 4 of us ended up having sort of medical emergencies, which is sort of kind of ironic. But his appendix, that was it. His appendix just burst. So I went to hospital, and then I was told that my retina detached. I needed to go into surgery as soon as possible, and that's what I did. And it was only when I ended up putting, I suppose, my story down on paper, not on words, on paper, that my parents were told to expect Ian in a sort of a front-facing position on the bed, because that's the normal recovery position you need to adopt after a retinal surgery. And when they came in to see me, I was sitting up normal previous to my other operations. So this sort of made them a little bit curious. So obviously spoke to the doctor, and the doctor said, listen, we unfortunately can't actually save the sight in Ian's eye. His eye will remain. If you want to remove it, we can. But working with Ian's retina is like working with wet tissue paper, and the tear is too big. So unfortunately, we can't do anything for him. So they went home that night, and don't think they got sort of a wink of sleep, because they said, they were saying to themselves, well, we have to go home knowing this news. Ian doesn't know, because I was in post-op.
Oh, you didn't know, right?
No, and he's going to be told the next morning that, there's nothing they can do. And you sort of go in with all your hopes and dreams and aspirations to just be made better again. But was told
and
the following day.
And who told you in the end? Was it Horace, your mother, or the doc, or who told you?
Doctor came in, who actually didn't perform the last surgery, but had, I was looking at 2 exceptional surgeons working on me and working with me. But this particular surgeon was the very first sort of on-call surgeon. So when I went into A&E after the initial accident, which would have been a couple of years or a year and a half prior, there was an intern there, and Lord help her, because it was probably just a little bit too much for where she was in her training and everything like that. And she went and called, and I waited close to about an hour for someone else to tell me what was happening. Yeah. And then this surgeon came in, who you knew the second that he spoke that you were in good hands. And he was the one that came in, and it was kind of a weird dynamic. And I you never want people to feel sorry for you, but the dynamic of it was, my family were there. Obviously, my mum and dad knew, but nobody else really knew. Okay. I think they kept it to themselves. I had a friend come and visit me. He was a couple of years ahead of me in school, and I hadn't seen him for a while, but he came to visit. So he was in the room. And then my sister came and brought a few pastries and coffees, and there was sort of like almost a joyous mood. Ian's had his surgery, and all will be okay. And then the doctor came in literally a couple of minutes after my sister and just said, we can't do any more. And it was like someone had said that someone had passed away, and you could just hear a pin drop and a few tears. And
where did your mind
wow.
go? Where did your mind go, and where did you go to seek solace in that moment? Can you recall?
Oh, just get me out of here.
Okay.
Cried, then just get me out of here. And I said, well, do I have to stay? They said, no, you're free to go. Yeah, and hopped in my sister's car, actually, and ate one of the croissants that she brought, and just went home to Dublin. And, home to Dublin. I was in Dublin in hospital, but went home and sort of just, pondered and sort of thought and cried and was angry and all sort of the natural emotions that you'd probably get with a bereavement. And phoned a few people, went to visit some of my closest friends. I just remember breaking down in tears, and the same from them, because they knew sort of how much rugby had meant to me. And I suppose when you get over that, then you're thinking next action. And this was sort of the thing, that you're sort of beaten into you a little bit in rugby. It's, your next action, and, whatever has happened, just, get on to the next thing. If you're on the ground, get up, get back in the defensive line, all that sort of stuff. So it was like, right, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep playing? Am I not? So spoke with my dad quite profoundly about things, and he just simply got me to write down positives and negatives for continuing to play. And unfortunately, there were 3 things in the negative list that just wouldn't go away, that I couldn't hide from. And one in particular was about being gouged twice in my good eye. And I was just like, rugby is so important to me, but what's more important here? Do I want to have a family and see them grow up and have the rest of your life to live? So made the excruciating decision a few weeks after to retire, and that was when I was 21, and went into Joe's office. And in some ways now, again, you only sort of discover things as you're sort of looking back. Like kit with my name on it was a big thing. I just always wanted that. I always wanted headshots. It was like an affirmation almost that you're well, not even you made it, but you're part of it. And I think there's a picture of me with a headshot, and it's, back in 2000, I think it's for the 2011, 2012 season, and my eyes a little bit red because it's just from the last op. But I wanted to get that, but I knew that I wasn't going to be playing. And it was, I think a few guys they knew that I wasn't going to be playing, that I was retiring. And it was a bit of a weird atmosphere, I must admit, because I suppose guys didn't know, and I can understand they didn't know sort of what to say or to do. But I remember that being sort of, I don't know, a sort of a strange moment. But the whole Leinster setup was just brilliant in terms of sort of constantly being there for me, offering me, would you want to come and coach here? Do you want to come in on the academy sessions, do some video sessions, stay involved with rugby? And even the players pooled together some money and gave me a holiday voucher, off their own bat, things like that.
You could have been done without being called Ian with one eye. Who called you that? Was it your brother or Czechs or something?
My brother-in-law.
It's very witty, but I wasn't sure it was appropriate.
No, well, see, again, I suppose as the years go on, it's you can joke about it a bit more. But he's I suppose ruined my life in some ways with that, but also very clever at the same time. But you sort of had to. And sure, listen, whenever I got back and played with the goggles, you can imagine comments from players, not as much as from the players, but more the fans, actually. Just passing comments and, are you able to see the posts? Or if you drop a ball, it was like, oh, you didn't see that one, and all the... I've heard them all at this stage. That's in some ways you try and use that as a bit of motivation. But I suppose just whenever you make that decision at 21, your life just falls down, I suppose. And what next? And so went back and finished my studies at UCD and did a bit of coaching. And from that, I got a
was it sports management? Was it?
Yeah.
And how was that to study and study all that? Was that tough?
I was not the model student.
Right.
I was absolutely not the model student, and it certainly helped UCD. I suppose this was the attraction, that UCD was just right beside where Leinster trained. So no, if I had and it's kind of ironic because I say to kids now, make sure make sure you have your education sorted. I absolutely did not follow that as much as I should. Now I've got a couple of little things, but nothing, no major degrees or no major PhDs or anything like that, like some of my friends do. But so yeah, it definitely was a struggle, because you'd get calls in the afternoon to be like, you'd done your academy training, and this is particularly in the first year, you did your academy training, and if you impressed or if there was an injury crisis or something, then they'd be like, well, we need you to hang around here for the senior training, and you're not going to say no.
Yeah.
An 18-year-old Michael Jecka goes to you, Ian, listen, we need you just to line up here on the seconds to prepare us for a game against Saracens or something, and you hope one day then you obviously broke in on a more regular basis with the first team. But so that dynamic was very difficult to deal with.
And is resilience to you exemplified by the work you and your brother did to develop the goggles and bring yourself back to play again? Is that what gives you energy and drive and satisfaction?
Have you ever been stuck on a weight loss plateau, trying everything and anything you can to lose that extra weight and reach peak health? We've all been there, but Noom's unlocked the secret to reaching the mountaintop. Go in micro. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $79 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Initial 3-week subscription and 4 weeks of medication from $79 plus tax, and $179 per month plus tax for 12-week subscription thereafter. Final pricing depends on program selection. Noom GLP-1 RX program involves healthy diet, exercise, and support. Individual results may vary. Meds and personalization based on clinical need. Not reviewed by FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality. No affiliation with Novo Nordisk Inc., the only U.S. source of FDA-approved semaglutide. Not available in all 50 U.S. states.
Taking care of your eyes shouldn't be a hassle. That's why Warby Parker is a one-stop shop for all your vision needs. Our prescription glasses and sunglasses are expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Stop by a nearby store or use our app to virtually try on frames and get personalized recommendations. Did we mention we offer eye exams and take vision insurance too? For everything you need to see, head to your nearest Warby Parker store or visit warbyparker.com today. That's warbyparker.com.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've never really sort of thought of it in that way. I suppose I certainly get a lot of, I suppose, inspiration from the people around me. My brother, said, grown up in a really loving family. In terms of from when I moved to Italy, and I'm sort of fast forwarding here a bit now, but moving to Italy, having a bit of it wasn't a breakdown, but an almighty cry in front of my brother about how I just want to go back and play rugby. That was sort of the shift in momentum, and he is so important to this story, much like everyone. But he spearheaded the whole sort of return to play, get Ian back, find the goggles, breaking down barriers of certain unions not signing up. And I know I'm sort of fast forwarding here, but certain unions not signing up to the goggles, well, then there's a bit of discrimination and all this sort of stuff. So he was very much to the fore of that. And I suppose in his sort of day-to-day and his line of work of what he does, certainly that he never judges anyone and just sort of tries to do the best that he can. And certainly that certainly inspired me. And also as well, Nevin Spence's untimely death, not just him, but his brother and his dad was a real kick up the backside for me.
So you were in a bad place, and that jolted you to say,
well, I had just moved over to Italy, and it was after about 6 weeks. So I was still in a honeymoon period of, I'm in Italy. Yeah. This is wonderful, and I'm not thinking about my injury.
Tutto bene.
Benissimo. So I was still, when that happened, I wasn't, I suppose, feeling sorry for myself. But as time went on, that's when the why me question started to come out a lot more. And then I sort of referenced in my own head that, well, Nevin is never going to get that opportunity again at such a young age. His opportunity was taken away. And yes, my opportunity to a certain degree was taken away. But how dare you moan about it when it's one eye? And yeah, I suppose just my depth perception had improved a bit more, and it was a case of, well, how confident are you and how safe an environment can you create? And that sort of, one was down to me, the first one, and the second one was down to getting the right people in the right room. And that's where my brother initiated all those conversations and got the ball rolling. And yeah, rugby goggles were not a thing for adults. Younger kids had sort of swimming goggles, sort of type eyewear, which a lot of young Gaelic players would have worn. There was nothing for adults, so this sort of kickstarted the conversation with that. And maybe it was because, I don't know, went to a small school as well, and there you were sort of, people would mutter to you, well, you're small school, you're not going to really do anything. You're not going to compete with someone who goes to Blackrock or Clongowes and it's like, well, okay, well, challenge accepted, and then this was you got injured, you probably won't get back and play, right? Well, challenge accepted. Okay, you've detached your retina, you're now retired, you probably won't get back wearing some eye goggles. Well, challenge accepted. And it was just a constant barrier always put up. It felt like that you were climbing, you climbed Erisbeg, then you climbed Carrantoohill, and then you went on to Mount Blanc, then you went up to, then Everest. It was constant. But I suppose you remember my brother said, and I think I put it in the book, his actual email, sort of the day after he left, whenever I broke down in front of him, and he put his thoughts down on email to me, and ultimately it was just like, well, you could essentially turn this negative into a huge positive, and think of the sort of ripple effect of that positivity that you could have on other people. And then it sort of became a thing of, well, yeah, okay, you want to play for yourself, but it actually became a lot bigger than that. And that, I suppose, steered that maybe bit of resolve a little bit more, that you weren't just doing it, and I'm not throwing this out in a cheesy way, but you weren't doing it for yourself, 100%. There was obviously an element of that, but you were also doing it for other people who had never experienced rugby or wanted to experience rugby, and they maybe were blocked as well. So that's
watching from a distance, and having seen you do a few interviews when I got interested, it's actually amazing that your career trajectory was halted in that way. But I think it's more amazing and incredulous that you used the energy to get yourself back to play again. I don't want to move fast forward too quick, but then you went and played for Italy 9 times at international level. Given what you've been through, I think that is more than remarkable. And you've told the story many times. It may seem easy to you, but it's incredible to have got back to that height. It's beyond Everest.
Yeah, but I appreciate it. You certainly don't. You don't get there on your own, and that's why I never ever dare say anything other than if it wasn't from the support of my family, my friends, and all that. But yeah, you just would have hoped that you did you're talking on the pitch, and I suppose, listen, if you're a coach, if you're trying to pick someone who's blind in their left eye, is left-footed, then wears goggles on top of things, which gives you 10 degrees less of field vision, bit tricky to play in rain, bit tricky to play when it's completely sunny due to the goggles, you're not exactly an attractive proposition for many professional teams. Yeah. So a huge amount of credit goes to the clubs that, I suppose, gambled on me, but you wanted it to make sure that it wasn't a gamble, that you felt that your performances merited it, and this wasn't just sort of a good feeling story that you were there to compete. But when you're in the middle of it, you literally are just week on week. Yeah. And I'm sure people doing interviews get sick and tired of hearing players and coaches going, well, we're only focusing on this week, next week will happen. Yeah. But it is very true, because the intensity of the way the week is built up, the intensity of the game, the pressures that come with social media, if you do look too far ahead, you will fall. So when you're in the thick of it, it is getting through week to week, performance to performance. So now, with a bit of time, it's been 5 years now since I played my last game, or announced my retirement. It might have even been 6 years since I played my last game. And you can definitely look back now with obviously a huge amount of pride, I suppose, when you think of where I certainly was on the hospital bed in 2011, told, okay, your retina's detached, to then fast forward sort of 6 years to be on an international pitch is a pretty good. And even, breaking down in front of my brother, that was 2013. So, to be back, I was back playing professionally then 1 year after. So things happen very, very quickly. And I suppose the really nice piece about it now is sort of at the start when you asked what am I up to, sort of through visual impairment, I've gotten into the current job I'm doing. I help run a visually impaired rugby team, which is based out of Old Wesley. Gotten to know really good people in the mixed ability rugby space, and they're doing the audio descriptive commentary for Virgin Media. So I think in some ways, if we're to go back to the email that my brother wrote all those years ago when he visited me in Udine in Italy, good things have happened. and certainly that, it is amazing. Anyone you speak to in a sporting arena, there is nothing that can match running out in front of a big stadium, or even if it's a small stadium, but a big game, sensing that energy that is almost impossible to recreate. But it's pretty close now, what I'm doing, giving the same sense of satisfaction, maybe not thrill, but definitely satisfaction. And if I'm to just use one example, in that VI rugby team, we have our vice captain said to me a few years ago, I'm 48 and this is the first time I've ever been part of a team due to my visual impairment. And you just go, wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. So that's sort of the stuff that keeps you going.
Ian McKinley, thank you very much for sharing your story on Ireland This.
The Scouting Report's in. Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile. Get unlimited wireless for $25 a month forever and keep your phone. It's a veteran move. Unlock the savings at boostmobile.com/unlock. $25 forever requires customers to remain active on Boost Mobile Unlimited Wireless Plan. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
As a small business owner, sometimes it feels like no matter how much planning you do, there's always surprises, like an urgent, expensive repair. But here's the surprise you will like. With Progressive, small business owners save 13% on their commercial auto insurance when they pay in full. So enjoy a surprise for once. Get a quote in as little as 8 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears. And when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.